Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Alexis Johnson, and I am the interim director of the Center for Faculty Life, where we do training for faculty to help them improve and help them learn and grow. And so we're starting a new series where we are going to be focusing on interviewing students. These are going to be short little kind of mini podcasts. So we're really excited to invite our first student, and I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself, say what your major is, what level of education you're in, and then we'll go ahead and start.
My name is Grace Webb, and I am a major in communication, and I should be graduating with a bachelor's degree this semester.
Awesome. That's so exciting. So I am going to ask you a few questions to just kind of get an idea of some things and experiences that you've had that have been effective that you would like to tell faculty about, and then any suggestions that you might have for faculty. So I'd like you to describe a professor who had a significant positive impact on your learning. What specifically made that effective?
Well, not stating you, I'm going to choose someone different, but I would say Dr. Adkins. He is my advisor, and the very first class I took with him, I was really scared of him, actually, because he is a very big presence, but I've taken his class, or one of his classes, every semester, and he's had a really big impact on me because I actually feel like I'm learning in his classes, and he makes sure that we do assignments and work that help us understand, and you can tell he really cares about what he's talking about, and that makes me want to learn those things as well.
That's awesome. And in what ways do you think that his communication has been great, but also just in general, what kind of communication can faculty do to be more effective and supportive to students?
I think 100% for him specifically, if he'll answer some of his emails, that would be good. But I understand we all have lives, we've got stuff going on. But I think for sure all faculty answering emails is very helpful. And then clearly posting when your office hours are for us so that we can come and talk to you if we need to. Sometimes that gets a little, skewed and hard to find. But I think just making sure that we have communication with faculty and it makes it easy for all of us.
Awesome. So in general, what role do you think faculty and professors should play in supporting their students outside of just teaching their course materials? So what role do you think the faculty should have for their students?
I'm probably going to say a mentorship type role. I think that role should probably be designated to your advisor so that, not every professor you have is trying to be your mentor. But I think now that we're in college and after college we, want to graduate and do something in our major, I think it's important for, them to kind of email us every now and then and ask, hey, do you have a plan for after college? Is there anything I can help you with? If you want recommendation letters, just let me know. I know Dr. Eshelman, he's the head of the communication department, and he has asked me several times, he's like, hey, do you know what you want to do after college, or do you have a plan for that? And that's always really helpful. It makes me feel like he actually cares about his students and what we go on to do after we graduate.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that's so important that faculty, and I think we could start that even before they're juniors and seniors, just asking and helping guide. That's a really great observation. So another question that I have is, what sorts of teaching methods in the classroom do you think are most effective? So for you as a student, you're a senior, so I think it's good to ask you, and I can't wait to hear from lower division classmen as well. But as far as just teaching methods, what do you think is most effective personally for you? Because I know we're all different learners, but have lectures been great? Have there been activities that have stood out to you that a professor has done that you were like, that was really great, or it got me really thinking on a deeper level? So what do you think?
I will say personally, I like to have hands-on learning, and I know that's a little bit harder in college, because I remember in high school once we carved a bar of soap, who was it? Aristotle, I think, made a sculpture or something, and we were trying to mimic that with a bar of soap, and it was just really difficult. But I think the way for me to bring in how I learn is like taking notes during a lecture, but also having lecture type discussions instead of somebody just, preaching at us the whole time. We actually have discussions and feed off one another as students. It's really hard for me to just sit there and like watch a video and try to intake those things without, having something to mess with or taking notes or something like that. Yeah. So I'm going to say, I guess, being lectured at, but also being able to respond and ask questions and talk to other students.
Awesome. Yeah, so kind of like a combination of different methods is effective. So what do you think that you would like faculty to know about the challenges that undergraduates face, like as far as balancing and what they can do to better support students, especially students who are struggling with like juggling like a job and sports and all these different things? What do you think faculty can do more effectively in helping support students in that way?
I think offering more high flex classes is good. I think those are really helpful for people who, are not in state or they have certain things going on while you have class, and that just gives them another avenue to continue to take those classes and get those credits. I think also just having a little flexibility with them and being like, maybe disclaimer at the beginning of class, like, hey, I know we all have stuff going on. We've got classes, work, whatever it is. If you need something, just like let the teachers know. I think if they're open to be like, hey, something happens, let me know. I know you're very good about being like, I just, there's a discussion post out there. I want you to answer. I want to get to know a little more about you. Something specifically I noticed from yours is like any triggers that you have or things that are hard for you to talk about. I think that's important. Now that, we're communicating better about like mental health things and stressors and anxiety, things like that, which is good. So I think making your students and faculty aware of that is good. But I also think having a very clear calendar. So I like things that are very structured, and I like to know when due dates are, and I like to know when things are happening. And I do understand that calendars change and classes change and stuff like that. But I think trying to have a calendar or a due date schedule of sorts that is pretty close to what you want, maybe a little flexibility in there, is really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as far as like how faculty can help translate what you're learning in class to skills, like what do you think the best way? I know we sort of talked a little bit about hands-on and like having those discussions, but are there things that you've noticed that a faculty's done, or an example you have, or a way that you think that faculty can really emphasize how you can translate these skills into your profession someday?
I think that making students aware of internships would be a really big one and really helpful, because I've heard of people that are like, I'm doing this internship this summer, and I'm like, how do you even find out about this stuff? Like, I didn't know anything about it, and I was just like, okay, like, me personally, I really don't know what I want to do after, but communication is something that I really enjoy and really like. So I think making like internships available and letting us know about them. Also, in one of my classes, we have guest speakers come and talk to us all the time and show us like different avenues. And I think guest speakers are a really great way to like, shake up the normal class a little bit and talk to like a fresh perspective of somebody who actually does something in this field.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great. That's a really great idea, and thing that, a professional from outside can kind of give a different insight than just learning it in the classroom. You can see how it's being planned hands-on. All right, I just have a couple more questions for you. What do you think as far as like feedback goes on assignments and things like that? Like, what do you look for as a student as far as getting feedback from faculty? What can they do that would be more effectively if they are someone who, some faculty are really great at getting feedback, some have really busy lives and it's not as easy. So for those faculty too that maybe take a little bit longer, what can make up for that time?
Well, on the note of feedback, I enjoy and really actually learn off feedback. One of my classes is writing for performance, and we're writing plays and monodramas, and feedback is one of the most important ways for me to fix it or, edit it and to make it better. For teachers who, can't do that at the time, or it's an assignment that they really don't know what to say, maybe something like that. I think that if there was like a section maybe at the end of whatever the assignment was, you could ask questions. And so if they're not good at getting feedback back to you, then asking those questions, they can answer them.
Awesome.
Or if they, don't have anything to say, then questions will help them guide the answer. And it doesn't have to be like crazy advanced, just like when you're grading, be like, hey, did I do this right? And you're like, yeah, you're good, or something like that.
Yeah. And you had another suggestion. Any suggestions as far as like classrooms go to keep students engaged? Because we talked about in class about how Tuesdays and Thursdays can be long, and I would love if you could share your suggestion on that, and then just in general, how to keep students engaged, especially when they're tired. If they're having like a day where they're just exhausted, or
100%.
They've had a really busy week, how do you keep them? What are ways you think that faculty can keep students engaged?
So during the Tuesday, Thursday classes, most of those classes are hour-and-a-half long classes, are really like 80-minute classes. But I find myself like just kind of zoning out towards the second half of the class. So I think if teachers would give us a 5 or 10-minute break in the middle of class to like wander the halls or go to the bathroom, or take like a brain break, like a little short mini nap or something, that would be really helpful. Because, if you do have one of those teachers that just lectures and lectures on and on, then you kind of leave the classroom and your brain is hurting and you're just like, oh my goodness. So I think a little break in the middle of those would be really helpful for a lot of students.
Awesome. That's a great suggestion. And I have one more question left. So if you could suggest one thing for professors to help them be better mentors and educators in general, what would that be? Like, what would your one piece of advice be?
It would probably be have better communication with your students and actually care. I mean, I know it's hard sometimes. There are hundreds of students, that you have to tend to and teach, but just actually care about them or act like you care. If you don't, I hope that wouldn't be the case, but act like you care and keep effective communication with them. Just keep talking to them, engaging them, help them think forward past college.
Yeah.
Because some of those teachers in high school, that are like, hey, what are you doing this? Or where do you want to go to college? That kept in contact with you. I still remember some of those teachers of mine, and I was like, they were the best teacher because they cared and they talked to me. And so I think having some of those same things brought into the college will be really helpful for once I graduate.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning into our first episode, and thank you, Grace, for being our first person to be willing to interview with me and give some feedback. I think it's so important for faculty to be able to hear from students. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
As your first student here.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. See you all in the next episode.